I never expected my retirement to become an unpaid internship for my son's marriage. After 40 years as a high school administrator, I had finally earned my quiet mornings. My husband passed away 5 years ago, leaving me a comfortable, debt-free home in the suburbs of Chicago. I had my garden, my books, and a peaceful routine. That peace shattered on a crisp Tuesday morning when a delivery truck backed into my driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as 2 men unloaded 4 massive wooden crates. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling my cardigan tight against the wind. "Excuse me," I called out. "I didn't order anything." The driver checked his clipboard. "Delivery for Vanessa Bradley. Address is right here." Vanessa was my daughter-in-law. Without a word to me, she had directed the delivery of her new custom kitchen cabinets to my house. The crates took up my entire garage, leaving my car parked out on the street under the falling oak leaves. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered on the 4th ring, typing loudly in the background. "Victoria, hi. Did the cabinets arrive?" "They did," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "They are filling my garage? When is your contractor moving them?" Vanessa sighed, a sharp sound of forced patience. "Julian and I are remodeling the 1st floor. We just need to store them at your place for 3 or 4 weeks. You don't even use the garage that much anyway." "I park my car in it," I noted. "And you didn't ask." "Family helps family, Victoria," she countered smoothly. "It's just a little inconvenience. I have to jump on a conference call." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. It wasn't just the cabinets. It was the assumption. Over the past year, my home had slowly become their overflow storage, and my time had become their backup plan. I walked back inside, leaving the crates where they sat, but a quiet realization took root in my mind. They thought they owned my space. I needed to show them they were wrong. 3 days later, the reality of Vanessa's entitlement escalated. At 7:30 in the morning, tires crunched on the gravel outside. I had just poured my first cup of coffee and was dressed in my clay-stained jeans for my morning pottery class. The front door swung open. Vanessa marched in, holding my 7-year-old grandson Leo by the hand. She dropped his heavy marble backpack onto my clean hallway runner. "Good, you're up," Vanessa announced, checking her smartwatch. "Leo's school has a teacher training day. I have back-to-back client meetings and Julian is at the office. We need you to watch him until 6. I set my coffee mug on the counter. "Good morning, Leo." I smiled at my grandson, then turned my attention back to her. "Vanessa, I have a ceramics workshop from 9 until noon." She waved her hand dismissively. "Just skip it." "It's a hobby, Victoria. This is our livelihood. Leo just needs lunch and someone to keep him off his iPad." She turned to leave, fully expecting me to comply. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stepped between her and the door. "I am not skipping my workshop," I stated. "I will take Leo with me. He can play with the clay. But moving forward, you need to ask me 48 hours in advance if you need childcare." Vanessa's jaw tightened. She looked at my messy jeans, then at Leo. "A pottery studio. That's not a structured environment for him. It is the environment available today," I replied evenly. "Otherwise, you can take him to your office." She glared at me, clearly calculating her options. Realizing she had no backup, she huffed. "Fine. Just make sure he doesn't ruin his good shirt." She walked out, slamming the car door behind her. I looked down at Leo, who was watching me with wide eyes. I winked at him. We were going to have a wonderful day at the studio, but the dynamic had shifted. I was done being the default option. I was done being invisible. While Leo was busy shaping a lopsided clay bowl at the studio, I sat on a stool nearby and opened the banking app on my phone. Vanessa's attitude that morning had sparked a nagging thought in the back of my mind. 2 years ago, Julian had called me in a panic. He had just taken a new job requiring a reliable vehicle, but his credit was tied up in their new mortgage. He needed someone to co-sign and cover the lease payments on a luxury SUV just for 3 months until his signing bonus cleared. Because he was my son, I agreed. I set up an automatic transfer of $750 from my checking account to the dealership every month. Julian promised he would take over the payments by Christmas of that year. Sitting in the dusty studio, I scrolled through my transaction history. January, February, March. The $750 deductions were still happening 24 months later. I had never bothered to check, trusting my son to handle his responsibilities. He never did. They were driving a high-end vehicle projecting an image of total corporate success entirely on my dime. That meant I had quietly paid $18,000 to fund their lifestyle, while Vanessa treated me like an unpaid nanny who was getting in her way. I didn't call Julian. I didn't send an angry text to Vanessa. Complaining would only invite excuses and arguments about how hard they were working. Instead, I tapped on the Scheduled Transfers tab. My finger hovered over the Cancel button. Not yet, I decided. I closed the app and put my phone in my pocket. If I cut it off now, they would scramble and guilt-trip me privately. I needed to ensure my boundaries were set in stone before I severed their financial lifeline. The money was gone, but the lesson was just beginning. Later that afternoon, a text popped up from Vanessa. My parents are in town this weekend. Dinner at our place on Sunday. We have a big announcement. Don't be late. I stared at the screen. I knew exactly what I had to do first. The next afternoon, I was sitting in my living room deeply engrossed in a novel. The house was perfectly quiet. Suddenly, the deadbolt clicked. The front door pushed open, hitting the hallway table. Vanessa strode in carrying a stack of fabric swatches. She didn't knock. She didn't even call out my name. She just walked straight into my kitchen, dropped the heavy books onto my marble island, and started opening my cupboards. I marked my page and stood up. "Can I help you, Vanessa?" She jumped, startling slightly. "Oh, Victoria, you're home. I need your crystal serving bowls. I'm hosting a brunch for the local real estate board tomorrow. You could have called," I said, walking into the kitchen. "I have a key," she countered, holding up the brass copy I had given Julian years ago for emergencies. "Anyway, pack them up for me. I have to run to the florist." She turned her back to me, completely unfazed by her own intrusion. She had walked into my sanctuary as if it were a self-service aisle at a department store. "The bowls are staying here," I replied. Vanessa stopped. She slowly turned around, a condescending smile playing on her lips. "Victoria, don't be difficult. I need them to impress the board. They are fragile and they belong to my mother," I answered calmly. "They are not leaving this house. Please leave your key on the counter before you go." Her smile vanished. "Are you serious? Julian gave me this key. It is my house." I stated my tone, leaving absolutely no room for debate. "The key, please." She tossed the key onto the counter with a loud clatter. "Unbelievable. You sit around doing nothing all day, and you can't even do one simple favor for your family." She stormed out the door, echoing through the quiet house. An hour later, I called a local locksmith. By 4 o'clock, the deadbolts on my front and back doors were entirely replaced with high-security locks. The physical boundary was set. The financial one was next. At noon the next day, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Julian. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Mom, what's going on?" he demanded. His voice carried that familiar whiny tone he used whenever he wanted me to fix something. I just tried to drop off the dry cleaning, and my key wouldn't turn. "I changed the locks, Julian," I replied, wiping down the countertops. "Why would you do that?" "What if there's an emergency?" "If there is an emergency, you can ring the doorbell," I explained. "Vanessa walked in unannounced yesterday to take my belongings. My home is not a supply closet." Julian groaned heavily into the receiver. "Mom, come on. Vanessa is under a lot of stress right now. She's trying to build her brand. You don't have to take everything so personally. I am taking it factually, Julian. I corrected him. I need my privacy. Well, you've really upset her. She feels completely unsupported. He paused, waiting for me to apologize and offer the new key. I remained silent. When he realized I wasn't going to budge, he sighed. Look, just come to dinner on Sunday. We have something important to discuss about Leo's future. We really need you on board. I will be there at 6, I said, and hung up. 10 minutes later, a text arrived from Vanessa. It wasn't an apology. It was a link to a website for the Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy. The tuition page was screenshotted. Take a look at this before Sunday. We need to finalize Leo's enrollment. I clicked the link. The tuition was $24,000 a year. I looked at the crates of custom cabinets still sitting in my garage, paid for by the money they saved, by having me cover their luxury car lease. They were living entirely beyond their means, treating my bank account and my home as a cushion for their arrogance. I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank. Sunday was going to be an educational evening for everyone. Sunday evening arrived with a chill in the air. I parked my modest sedan on the street outside Julian and Vanessa's sprawling 2-story colonial home. The driveway was occupied by the gleaming SUV I had been quietly paying for. Inside the house smelled of expensive candles and roasted lamb. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Helen, were already seated on the plush living room sofa, holding glasses of imported wine. Robert was a retired corporate lawyer, and Helen spent her days managing a country club's social calendar. They always looked at me with a mix of pity and mild amusement. Victoria, Helen called out, waving her manicured hand. So glad you could make it. We were just talking about Vanessa's kitchen remodel. It's going to be absolutely stunning. Hello, Helen. Robert? I greeted them politely. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a linen towel. She wore a silk blouse and her signature diamond studs. She looked me up and down, noting my simple wool sweater and trousers. You made it, Vanessa said. Dinner's almost ready. Victoria, be a dear and start bringing the salad plates to the dining room. I need to check the lamb. She didn't ask her mother. She asked me immediately, trying to establish my role as the help. I walked past her into the dining room, taking a seat at the table instead. I'm sure you have it handled, Vanessa. I'll sit right here. Julian came out of the hallway looking nervous. He loosened his collar and shot me a pleading look, silently begging me not to cause a scene. I simply smiled at him. I had no intention of causing a scene. I was just done playing my assigned part. We all gathered around the long mahogany table. Robert poured the wine. The conversation was dominated by Vanessa boasting about her real estate listings and Julian nodding along. As the dessert plates were cleared, Vanessa tapped her spoon against her crystal wine glass. Since we are all together, she began projecting her voice. Julian and I have an important family update. Vanessa stood at the head of the table, resting her hands on the polished wood. She looked at her parents, beaming, and then turned her gaze to me. As you all know, Leo is getting older, Vanessa announced. We've decided to enroll him at Oak Ridge Preparatory. It has the best STEM program in the state. Wonderful choice, darling, Robert agreed, raising his glass. Best investment you can make. Vanessa smiled thinly. Exactly. But the tuition is steep, and with the house renovations, we need to restructure our assets. So Julian and I have come up with the perfect solution. She looked directly at me. Victoria, your house is much too big for one person. The upkeep must be exhausting for you. We've decided the best move is for you to rent out your property. The rental income will cover Leo's tuition perfectly. The room went quiet. I didn't blink. And where exactly would I live? Vanessa. Here. Julian chimed in, trying to sound enthusiastic. In the finished basement. It has a bathroom, Mom. You'll be close to Leo, you can help with the cooking, and you won't have to worry about maintaining a whole house. I looked at my son. He was seriously suggesting I give up my paid-off home, hand them my rental income, and move underground to be their live-in maid. No, I said clearly. Vanessa's smile hardened into a rigid line. No, Victoria, this isn't just about you. This is about Leo's future. You're retired. You don't need all that space. We're offering you a place in our home. You are offering me a demotion in my own life to fund yours. I replied, my voice, calm but firm. My house is not an asset for you to liquidate. The answer is absolutely no. Vanessa crossed her arms, her face flushing red. She looked at Julian, her eyes flashing with pure rage, silently ordering him to handle me. Julian swallowed hard, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Julian stared at me across the dining table. His in-laws were watching him, expecting him to assert dominance. Vanessa was glaring at him, furious that I had rejected her master plan. The pressure cracked him. Mom, stop being so difficult. Julian snapped his voice, echoing loudly in the dining room. Vanessa has planned this out perfectly. We include you in everything. We let you be part of this family. And you can't even make one sacrifice for your grandson. He leaned forward, a cruel smirk appearing on his face, mimicking his wife's arrogance. You just sit in that big, empty house. You're so selfish. The entire table went dead silent. Helen gasped softly. Robert raised an eyebrow. Vanessa looked triumphant. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I calmly picked up my linen napkin, folded it meticulously, and placed it next to my plate. Then I looked Julian dead in the eye. I may be selfish with my house, I said, the quiet authority in my voice cutting through the tension. But for the past 24 months, I have quietly paid $750 every single month to cover the lease on the luxury SUV sitting in your driveway. The smirk vanished from Julian's face instantly. The color drained from his cheeks, leaving him pale and wide-eyed. I turned my gaze to Vanessa, who was frozen in place. That is $18,000 I have spent so you two could pretend to be wealthy. $18,000 that allowed you to buy custom cabinets and host country club dinners, all while treating me like an unpaid servant. Robert lowered his wine glass, staring at Julian in absolute shock. Julian, is this true? Your mother is paying for your car. Julian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the table, humiliated, stripped of the successful facade he had spent years building in front of his wife's parents. The silence in the room was suffocating. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the hardwood. As of 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I added smoothly that automatic transfer is permanently canceled. Good luck with the tuition. I walked out of their house, leaving the front door perfectly closed behind me. The crisp night air felt fantastic against my face. I drove home, parked my car on the street, and walked past the crates of cabinets in my garage without a second glance. I slept better that night than I had in years. At exactly 8:00 a.m. the next morning, I walked into my local bank branch. It took less than 5 minutes to sign the form, revoking the automatic transfer to the auto dealership. The financial cord was officially cut. By 10:30 a.m., my phone started ringing. It was Julian. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. Finally, I picked up. Mom, please. Julian's voice was frantic, stripped of all the arrogance from the night before. The dealership just called me. The payment bounced. They said if I don't give them a new card by tomorrow, they're going to report it to the credit bureaus. It'll ruin our mortgage refinance. Then I suggest you give them a new card, Julian, I replied, watering the ferns on my porch. We don't have the cash this month. We just paid the contractor for the kitchen demo. You can't just cut me off without warning. You had a 24-month warning, I reminded him gently. You told me you would take over the payments by your first Christmas at the new job. You are a grown man. Handle your lease. Vanessa is threatening to take Leo to her parents' house, he blurted out, his voice cracking. Her dad laid into me for an hour last night after you left. They know we're broke. Mom, you ruined us. I didn't ruin you, Julian. I just stopped paying for the illusion. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel guilty. For years, I had believed that being a good mother meant buffering him from the consequences of his own choices. I realize now that true boundaries don't require arguments. They simply require action. 2 days later, a contractor's truck finally arrived at my house. 2 men loaded up the heavy wooden crates containing Vanessa's kitchen cabinets and drove them away. My garage was empty clean and entirely mine again. I parked my car inside, closed the heavy door, and smiled. Vanessa showed up only once. It was a Saturday afternoon. She stood on my porch holding a Tupperware container, looking exhausted. The flawless corporate armor was gone. I opened the door, leaving the screen door locked between us. Victoria, she said, her tone devoid of its usual sting. Julian had to return the car. We're sharing my sedan. The school enrollment is canceled. She paused, looking down at the porch boards. We need help with Leo on Tuesdays and Thursdays, just until we figure things out. I looked at her. I loved my grandson, and I missed him. But returning to the old system would only breed the old disrespect. I will happily take Leo to the park on Sunday afternoons, just the 2 of us, I offered calmly. But I will not be your weekday childcare, Vanessa. You will have to figure out a professional arrangement for that. She tightened her grip on the plastic container, realizing the power dynamic had permanently shifted. I held the keys to my house, the control over my money, and the rights to my own time. She nodded slowly, left the container on the porch chair, and walked back to her car. Life returned to a beautiful, steady rhythm. I spent my mornings at the pottery studio and my afternoons in my garden. When Sunday rolled around, Julian dropped Leo off for 2 hours. He didn't come inside, and he didn't ask for favors. I sat on a park bench watching my grandson chase pigeons across the grass. I wasn't a live-in maid, a storage facility, or a silent bank account anymore. I was simply Victoria. And for the first time in years, my retirement truly belonged to me.